On November 6th, we arrived in Germany to begin our Danube Waltz Viking River Cruise. During this week-long cruise, we would admire the Wachau Valley's beauties, witness daily life in an abbey on an exclusive visit to Göttweig, savor Austro-Hungarian cuisine in Vienna and Budapest, and explore lesser-known Central European cities like Bratislava and Passau. This 8-day itinerary reveals the best that these cities have to offer, while cruising leisurely through spectacular scenery. For this cruise, we're in room 312. It is a veranda suite. As you can see, there's a little wet bar area. There's a fully stocked mini fridge. Every day they replenish sodas, wine, and beer. They also will supply fresh fruit every day. We received a complimentary bottle of champagne. There is a sitting area with a chair and a couch. There's also a little desk area. Plenty of storage around the desk. And you have a flat screen television. And out there is the deck. The room does have a separated bedroom area. There are 2 twin-size beds and a little Juliet balcony. There's a nightstand separating the beds and one on the wall as well. And there is another flat screen television. And there is again plenty of storage. Nice closet, and there is even a safe to lock up all your valuables. The bathroom is small but is very functional. You have a sink and commode, and then there is a nice walk-in shower, and the water pressure is very good for a cruise ship. Flanking the borders of Austria and the Czech Republic, Passau dates back more than 2,500 years. Originally settled by the Celts, then by the Romans, it later passed in possession of prince-bishops whose domains stretched into present-day Hungary. In 752, a monk named Boniface founded the Diocese of Passau, which at its height would be the largest church subdivision in the entire Holy Roman Empire. Passau's location is truly unique. Nowhere else in Europe do 3 rivers meet: the Ilz from the north, the Danube from the west, and the Inn from the south. Passau's winding cobblestone streets and riverside setting combine to create a romantic and beautiful place to explore. Nestled between the 3 rivers that meet here, the Old Town's scenic streetscape is filled with spectacular Gothic and Baroque architecture. Pretty squares and splendid bridges add to the romantic feeling Passau exudes. On this walking tour, we explored the Italian-style streets of Passau, where 3 European rivers have converged to shape a distinctive city. We began our walking tour through delightful old-world streets, taking in a pastel rainbow of building facades as we strolled. We saw the impressive bishop's residence from which powerful prince-bishops ruled secular and religious life for hundreds of years. We then continued past the 14th century Rathaus or town hall, built on the site of a former fish market on the Danube. The walk concluded at the magnificent 17th century St. Stephen's Cathedral, This Baroque wonder houses Europe's largest pipe organ with more than 17,000 pipes and inspired Franz Liszt to write his Hungarian coronation mass. The splendid mansions, the sublime residence, and the Gothic cathedral choir. The residence square is a total artwork. It is known as one of the most beautiful Baroque squares north of the Alps. In the middle, the Wittelsbach fountain with its rippling cascades completes the Mediterranean flair. Once the square was named Unter den Kramern, which translates to beneath the grocers. Until 1712, the city's big warehouse was located here. It was then torn down for the construction of the new bishop's residence, prompted by Bishop Lambert, whose court became too big for the old residence. The town hall of Passau consists of one large council chamber and one smaller council chamber. They are located in the old town hall and are accessible via Gothic staircase dating back to 1446. Following the devastating Great Fire of 1662 and 1680, this hall was reconstructed with 2 naves and 3 flat case bays by the Italian master builders Carlo Lurago and Giovanni Battista Colonna. The Mary and the Three Angels fountain was built in 1903 to commemorate Passau's 100 years as part of Bavaria. The Wittelsbach fountain was created by the Munich-based sculptor Jacob Brandl. It shows Mary on the middle column. At her feet there are 3 angels that symbolize Passau's 3 rivers. Angel Danube wears ears of wheat in its hair. Angel Ils is adorned with pearls, and Angel In wears a Tyrolean hat. The St. Stephen's Cathedral rises majestically on the highest point of the earliest settled part of Passau. This magnificent building, with its white towers and blue-green domes, is the crucial Baroque church north of the Alps. A baptismal church stood on this spot in the 6th century, and 200 years later the first basilica was built. It was dedicated to St. Stephen. Passau had never seen or experienced such a high workforce of stone masons, bricklayers, carpenters, painters, sculptors, carvers, gold and silversmiths, suppliers, distributors, and guilds before. With this foundation, the city of Passau experienced an increase of its economic, social, artistic, and cultural significance in the Danube area. A fire reduced the medieval church to ruins in 1662. It was then rebuilt by Italian master architect Carlo Lugago. The interior was decorated by Giovanni Battista Colonna with heavy Baroque stucco. The ornately interior holds an exceptional treasure, the biggest cathedral organ in the world, with 17,974 pipes and 233 registers. The marked round tower with its pointed roof dominates the view over the River Inn. The Skibillingssturm is a popular photo spot and has had several functions over the centuries. Today it belongs to a secondary school and is used for workshops only a few times a year. In the early days, the tower was used as a defensive tower. This was the original function for which the tower was built in 1250, on a rock at the shores of the River Inn. The tower was originally part of the medieval town walls. It was also used as a storage tower. After its renovation in the 15th century, salt was stored here. Over time, the tower became a mooring point. During the time of salt trading, the tower was a mooring point for boats. Until 1957, there was even a cable ferry that traveled from the tower to the Innenstadt. Over the years, the tower was even used as an accommodation. Residents were, for example, watchmen, journalists, as well as actors. High above Passau stands the Fortress Oberhaus, which is over 800 years old. In this building, history comes alive in a unique way. Covering an area of 65,000 square meters, it is one of the largest and best preserved fortresses in Europe. The Battery Viewpoint and the newly reopened Observation Tower offer the best views of the picturesque old town and of the confluence of the 3 rivers Danube, Inn, and Ills. St. George's Chapel, with its unique and extensive fresco cycle displaying scenes of the legend of St. George, is located at the heart of the fortress. Today, we experience all the charms of this capital of Upper Austria during a walking tour. Founded by the Romans, Linz rose to prominence under the Habsburg Empire. Today, it remains a vibrant cultural center. Linz is a city in Austria straddling the Danube River midway between Salzburg and Vienna. This capital of Upper Austria is a fascinating mix of the old and the new. On the one hand, Austria's third largest city has been casting a spell on visitors for centuries, thanks to its beautiful old houses on the city's vast medieval square, its Baroque cathedral with twin towers, and its unique historical railroad track. But on the other hand, it's also one of Austria's most modern, cosmopolitan, and cultural cities, with groundbreaking theaters and concert halls, high-tech museums and galleries, and a dedication to creating a bike-friendly, traffic-free city center. Linz originated as the Roman fortress Lensia around 799 AD, and later became an important medieval trading center. By the 13th century, it had all of the outward characteristics of a city, but none of a city's rights. It became the provincial capital in the 15th century, during the residence of the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick III, and it was noted for the number of fairs that it held. The heart of Linz is its Baroque main square, which is one of the largest enclosed squares in Austria, with around 13,200 square meters. In the center of the main square is an impressive 20-meter high column that was completed in 1723. The pillar, which is made of white marble, is dedicated to the Trinity and was built in gratitude for surviving disasters and to protect against fire, war, and plague. As a marketplace, the main square soon helped the city of Linz to achieve an economic boom. Even today, Linz's main square is still the venue for a large number of events and markets. The old town of Linz inspires with impressive facades of historic buildings and quiet places to relax. During the day, there's a lot of activity in the unusual shops and stores. And in the evening, the restaurant and bars provide a relaxing place to enjoy its cozy atmospheres. The unique shops, fine boutiques, and unusual eateries off the beaten track are popular with both locals and visitors. Festivals and evening events of all kinds are constantly taking place on the picturesque square of the old town. At the lower end of the main square, the original 1513 building was mostly destroyed by fire and replaced in 1658 to 1659. Its octagonal corner turret and lunar clock and some vaulted rooms remain, and you could detect traces of the original Renaissance structure of the Rathaus facade. The present exterior dates from 1824. The old cathedral, also called Ignatius Church or Jesuit Church, has been a feature of Linz since 1678. The Roman Catholic Church served as the Episcopal Church of the Diocese of Linz for around 125 years, until the Immaculate Conception Cathedral took over this function in 1909. After this takeover in 1909, the Baroque Ignatius Church was put back into the hands of the Jesuit order, which is still active in the cathedral today. The building is a Baroque jewel in downtown Linz. Inside, the high altar and the pulpit adorn the apparition. The high altar is a 3-story building consisting of the altarpiece, an attachment pitcher, and above it a crown supported by angels. The very richly decorated pulpit shows the sermon in the Jesuit church has a special meaning. With its stucco work, pink marble altar, and gilt pillars, the interior is remarkably ornate. famous local musician Anton Bruckner served as organist here from 1856 to 1868. Today, the cathedral is an important spiritual venue in the city. Church events regularly take place in the church, such as organ concerts, spiritual evenings, confessionals, and special festivals. Today's journey through the Wachau Valley was a cold and gloomy one, but the scenery made up for the frigid conditions. The Wachau is a stretch of the Danube Valley between Melk and Krems, a landscape that shows a remarkably preserved medieval landscape that has evolved organically over time. The architecture in the towns and villages shows the development of the region and its society over many centuries. The Wachau has inspired romantic legends for centuries, and the castles are full of tales of love and heartbreak, particularly from the medieval days. The beauty of the architectural lands in the Wachau, which frame the banks of the Danube River, is undeniable. But for visitors, the attraction goes beyond superficial looks. This region has been worked for thousands of years and shows adaptations made necessary by climate and market. The area here provides a perfectly preserved medieval landscape, including architecture in the towns and villages that has continued to change with the times at a human pace. This beautiful stretch of the Danube has inspired romantic legends for centuries. Every structure holds tales of love and heartbreak, particularly from the Middle Ages. One story tells of King Richard the Lionheart of England, who was imprisoned in a castle here. His loyal minstrel wandered the land singing a specific song and was able to find his king when Richard responded by singing back to him from his prison cell. One of the best ways to experience the Wachau Valley's landscape is to trace the route of the Danube River as it snakes its way through the countryside. From the river banks, vineyards reach into the hills, while towns and villages dot the landscape. In the town of Melk, the Benedictine Abbey, which you can visit, stands as a pearl of Baroque architecture. Other castles and wineries along the river offer plenty of places to stop and explore the region's culture and natural highlights. Krems marks the beginning when traveling upstream of the Wachau section of the Danube. The town is closely tied to Austrian history. Here, the ruling Babenberg set up a dukedom in 1120, and the earliest Austrian coin was struck a year later. In the Middle Ages, Krems looked after its iron trade, while neighboring Stein traded in salt and wine. Now, according to Austrian law, any town that houses a jail must receive massive funding for its arts. Thus, charming Krems is fat with culture, starting with its Arts Mile. Besides a number of galleries and eateries, Krems is full of many interesting museums. The area is also the center of a thriving wine-producing area, but Krems is most famed for the cobblestone streets of its old town, which is virtually unchanged since the 18th century. The lower Old Town is an attractive pedestrian-only zone, while up a steep hill, you'll find the Upper Old Town, with its Renaissance town hall and a parish church that is one of the oldest in Lower Austria. Krems is one of the oldest residences on the Danube. A document dating back to 995 has survived, which mentions a castle called Kremesa. This makes Krems the oldest city in Lower Austria. The area was already populated in the Paleolithic age, as evidenced by the Venus vom Galgenberg statue, which is a more than 32,000-year-old statuette of a woman. After the Romans, the Germanic people settled in Stein around 48 AD. The Romans, who had always had a taste for finer things in life, cultivated vineyards around Krems. Krems-Stein was the most important hub between shipping and land transport, more important than Vienna in fact. Krems and Stein have formed a city community since the 13th century. The farms, churches, and townhouses were built and designed by the best builders in the country. Many artists and artisans have moved to the prosperous Danube city since the Middle Ages. Education was a central concern of commercial citizens, where they successfully tried to provide their sons and daughters with a solid school education, and soon opened up access to university education. Krems became a thriving commercial, cultural, and educational city. This development continues to this day. Krems is also a flourishing economic, cultural, educational university town in the 21st century. Today we experienced a Benedictine abbey where monks work and worship. A scenic drive took us to the abbey, located on a hilltop overlooking the splendid Wachau Valley and the Danube River. Our host and guide welcomed us at the cellar entrance with a glass of sparkling apricot wine produced in the region. We then enjoyed a private viewing of a short film about monastic life and learned what it takes to run a monastery today. We stepped through the church's neoclassical portal to admire its colorful and ornate interior. We then continued into the Abbey's museum, which chronicles its 900-year history as a center of religious life and its role as a monastic retreat. Finally, we climbed the imperial staircase, crowned by one of the largest and most spectacular ceiling frescoes in the world. The adjoining princely and imperial rooms showcase splendid artwork from the Abbey's own collections. The Göttweig Abbey is a Benedictine monastery near Krems in Lower Austria. It was founded in 1083 by Altman, Bishop of Passau. By 1094, the discipline of the community had become so lax that Bishop Ulrich of Passau, with the permission of Pope Urban II, introduced the Rule of St. Benedict. The main tenet of the rule is for monks to work and pray. The rule provides a moderate path between individual zeal and formulaic institutionalism. Because of this middle ground, it has been widely popular. Around the time that the Rule of St. Benedict was enforced, Prior Hartman of the St. Blaise's Abbey in the Black Forest was elected abbot. Under Hartman, Göttweig became a famous seat of learning and strict monastic observance. He founded a monastic school, organized a library, and at the foot of the hill built a nunnery where it is believed that Ava, the earliest German language poetess known by name, lived as an anchoret. The nunnery, which was afterwards transferred to the top of the hill, continued to exist until 1557. During the 15th and 16th centuries, however, the abbey declined, so that between 1556 and 1564, it had no abbot at all. And in 1564, not a single monk was left here. At this crisis, an imperial deputation arrived at Göttweig and elected Michael Herrlich as abbot. The new abbot, who held his office until 1603, restored the monastery spiritually and financially, and rebuilt it after it had been almost entirely destroyed by a fire in 1580. In 1718, the monastery burnt down and was rebuilt on a grander scale during the abbacy of Gottfried Bessel. The fresco decorating the imperial staircase is considered a masterpiece of Baroque architecture in Austria. The fresco was executed by Paul Troger in 1739, and it represents the Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI as Apollo. The abbey has a library of 150,000 books and manuscripts, and a particular important collection of religious engravings, besides valuable collections of coins, antiquities, musical manuscripts, and natural history, all of which survived the dangers of World War II and its immediate aftermath almost without loss. Since 1625, the abbey has been a member of the Austrian congregation, now within the Benedictine Confederation. Today, the monks number about 45. Today, we saw the magnificent architectural highlights of one of Europe's most elegant and romantic cultural capitals, the center of arts and intellect during the reign of the Habsburgs and beyond. Vienna dances to a temple all its own. We met our guide and drove into the city for a half-day motor coach tour as well as a walking tour. The tour was focused on the splendid buildings on the remarkable Ringstrasse, the gracious boulevard laid out on the side of the old city walls in the mid-19th century. Imposing palaces, elegant public buildings, and grand residences line this world-famous avenue. We saw the magnificent Hofburg Palace, the winter residence of the Habsburgs and home of the Spanish riding school, with its Lipizzaner horses. We admired the great Gothic St. Stephen's Cathedral, crowned with a gleaming spire and colorful roof tiles. And we viewed the beautiful Vienna State Opera Concert Hall, its facade adorned with elaborate frescoes depicting Mozart's opera, The Magic Flute. Vienna was founded as a Roman military encampment around AD 50, and remained so for some 300 years. Vienna's heyday as a European capital did not begin until 1683, after a huge force of invading Turks laid siege to the city for 2 months before being ousted. Among the supplies they left behind were sacks of coffee beans. And so the story goes, this gave birth to the coffee house culture that remains one of the city's most prized customs. They were gilt-covered halcyon decades of symphonies and sonatas, concertos and operas. Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven were soon followed by Schubert, Strauss, and Brahms, all of whom lived in the city during the peaks of their careers. Their music resounded in the grand halls of newly built Baroque edifices, erected as art, their flaming columns reaching upward to graceful domes, perched atop like an elegant gentleman's hat. It was a time of wealth and enlightenment. Maria Theresa ruled the Habsburg kingdom when the mighty empire was at its zenith, and though it is long gone, many reminders of its impressive heyday remain, carefully preserved by the tradition-loving Viennese. The glories of its artistic past are particularly evident thanks to the cultural legacy of the many artistic geniuses that nourished here over the years. The Stephen's Dome, or St. Stephen's Cathedral, is Vienna's soaring centerpiece. This beloved cathedral enshrines the heart of the city. Although when first built in the 12th century, it stood outside the city walls. Vienna can thank a period of hard times for the Catholic Church for the cathedral's distinctive silhouette. Originally, the structure was to have had matching 445-foot-high spires, a standard design of the era, but funds ran out, and the North Tower to this day remains a happy reminder of what gloriously it is not. Today's Vienna, with a multicultural population of 1.7 million, is as vibrant and stunning as was Maria Theresa's Baroque wonderland. Side streets teem with buskers playing to appreciative crowds. Churches and halls resound with the notorious strains of Strauss on summer days, while the city's nightlife and the fabulous music scene it nurtures is one of Europe's best-kept secrets. The history of Schönbrunn dates back to the Middle Ages, from the beginning of the 14th century. The original estate boasted a corn mill, farm, and vineyards. Over the following centuries, several people lived here, including in 1548, one Hermann Bayer, mayor of Vienna, who extended the property, transforming it into a substantial country estate. In 1569, the estate came into Habsburg possession through Maximilian II. Maximilian was primarily interested in extending the game park, which was principally intended for the breeding of native game and fowl. However, the pheasantry also contained exotic fowls such as peacocks and turkeys. Following the sudden death of Maximilian II in 1576, the estate was passed to Rudolf II, who did little except sanction the necessary funds for its upkeep. Emperor Matthias used the estate for hunting. According to a legend, while out hunting in 1612, Emperor Matthias came across the Schönbrunn, which means fair spring, which eventually gave the estate its name. Emperor Matthias's successor, Emperor Ferdinand II, and his wife Eleonora von Gonzaga, both passionately keen on hunting, chose Schönbrunn as the venue for their hunting parties. After Ferdinand's death in 1637, the estate became the residence of his art-loving widow, who needed the appropriate architectural setting for her busy social life. She therefore had a chateau built here around 1642. In 1683, the chateau and its deer park fell victim to Turkish troops during the siege of Vienna. In 1686, the estate was in the possession of Emperor Leopold I, who decided that he would give the estate over to his son and heir, Joseph, and have a splendid new residence built for him. Soon afterwards, the Roman-trained architect, Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach, arrived at court on the recommendation of aristocratic patrons. In 1688, he presented the emperor with a preliminary set of designs for a new palace. In 1693, Leopold I commissioned concrete plans from Fischer for the construction of a grand hunting lodge, on which work started in 1696. The new edifice was partly built on the existing foundation of the chateau that had been destroyed by the Turks. By the spring of 1700, the central section had been completed and was ready to be occupied. Fischer von Erlach was responsible not only for designing the palace, but also supervised the construction work. The compact structure of the palace, with a monumental external stairway in front of the central projection, was flanked by lateral wings accommodating the stables. These buildings enclosed a parade court. The staterooms of the palatial hunting lodge lay on the side of the parade court, with Joseph I's private suite lying on the side facing the garden, in the west wing of the palace, while the east wing was used to accommodate guests. In 1728, Emperor Charles VI acquired Schönbrunn, but used the estate only for shooting pheasants. Eventually, he made a gift of it to his daughter, Maria Theresa, who is documented as having always had an especial fondness for the palace and its gardens. Maria Theresa's reign marked the opening of a brilliant epoch in Schönbrunn's history, with the palace becoming the center of court and political life. Under the supervision of the architect Nicholas Pacassi, Joseph I's Grand Hunting Lodge was rebuilt and extended into a palatial summer residence. The first phase of construction was carried out from 1743 to 1749. Work commenced on the imperial apartments in the East Wing, with audience rooms and residential suites for Maria Theresa and Franz Stephan, which was ready for occupation by 1746. The following phase in 1746 included the removal of the central exterior flight of stairs that Fisher had built on the parade grounds. During the same phase, the blue staircase was constructed in the West Wing out of the former dining room designed by Fischer von Erlach in order to provide a suitable, imposing entrance to the piano room. The steady growth of the imperial family made new alterations in the East Wing necessary by 1747. A new mezzanine floor, being inserted between the piano room and the second story, served as apartments for the imperial children and their friends. The two galleries at the center of the palace provided space for large-scale festivities, with the small gallery being used for lesser family celebrations. Other alterations at this time included the arcades connecting the side wings, known as the Cavalier Wings, along the parade court, which housed the higher-ranking court servants. Adjacent to these and extending both eastward and westward, a complex of working quarters was constructed. These were urgently needed as Schönbrunn had now become an imperial residence, and including the imperial family and the court, more than 1,000 people had to be provided for and accommodated. At Maria Theresa's wish, a theater was also built in the North Parade Court wing, and ceremonially opened in 1747. Following Maria Theresa's death in 1780, Schönbrunn Palace remained unoccupied, and its use as a summer residence was only resumed during the reign of Emperor Franz II. In the intervening period, Schönbrunn was occupied twice, in 1805 and 1809, by Napoleon, during which the French Emperor used the memorial rooms to Franz Stephen in the East Wing as his quarters. In the run-up to the Congress of Vienna in 1814, it had become clear that the palace at Schönbrunn urgently needed restoring, and that the apartments of the imperial family would have to be refurbished in order to bring them into line with current fashions. During the course of these improvements, Emperor Franz had the facade altered between 1817 and 1819 to designs by the court architect Johann Amann, which considerably changed its appearance. Amann removed Pacassi's elaborate Rococo decorations from the facade, reducing it to much plainer forms with only a small number of decorative elements, giving the palace the appearance it retains to this day. Bratislava was built on a smaller scale than other European capitals. Today, we joined our guide and set off along the Amber Road, tracing the ancient trade routes that once linked northern and southern Europe. We stopped to view the Gothic-style Universitas Istropolitana, the first university to have been founded in present-day Slovakia. Though it operated for only 25 years, it proved highly influential in the fields of mathematics and astrology. In the main square, we admired the Roland Fountain, built in 1572 to provide water to the public. Around the square, we saw the Rococo Late Baroque Bratislava Palace, residence of the president, and the rose-hued Archbishop's Palace, home to today's mayor. We also saw the Gothic St. Martin's Cathedral, home of Hungarian coronations for more than 250 years. Bratislava is the only capital in the world located on the border of 3 sovereign states, Slovakia, Austria, and Hungary. Besides its strategic location on the river Danube, the city takes pride in its rich history. The first Celtic settlement was founded here in the 2nd century BC. The location at the intersection of two important historical trade routes, the Danube and the Amber Roads, highly influenced the development of trade and handicraft. For 247 years, Bratislava was the capital of the Hungarian kingdom, which ruled from 1536 until 1783, and for 267 years was also the coronation city. This lasted from 1563 to 1830. It experienced rapid growth under the reign of Maria Theresa, crowned the Hungarian queen in 1741, and the Bratislava Castle became a representative royal seat. Not only the castle, but also the newly built aristocratic Baroque and Rococo palaces enjoyed bustling political, social, and cultural life enriched by visits of musical prodigies Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Ludwig van Beethoven, and Joseph Haydn. After the fall of the Iron Curtain in 1989, Bratislava started to profile as a modern European metropolis and an attractive tourist destination. Slovakia may be one of the world's youngest nations, but the country and its capital, Bratislava, has a long and illustrious history. Settled since the Neolithic era, Bratislava and the area around has spent much of its time as a component of a larger state. From the Roman Empire to the Kingdom of Hungary, the Habsburg monarchy to Czechoslovakia. In 1993, Slovakia became an independent state, and since then, Bratislava has blossomed into a thriving, modern European capital, while still retaining its charming historic center. The city's most visible attraction is its enormous white Renaissance castle, perched on a rocky hill overlooking the Danube. But head down to the ground level and you'll find there are plenty of other charms to the city. From the extensive old town that combines medieval and Gothic architecture, to the thriving restaurant and nightlife culture that seriously rivals Vienna. Bratislava Castle, the landmark overlooking the capital city, was built in the 9th century. As an age-long symbol of the city, it proudly stands on the hill above the Danube River. 11 kings and 8 queens were crowned in Bratislava in the past. No wonder that the castle is a popular part of excursions throughout the city. The castle stands on an important crossroad of the ancient routes. First traces of the settlement on the hill stretch back to the Stone and Bronze Age. The place had its strategic geographical importance in the period of the Great Moravian Empire. First Hungarian King Stephen I in the 11th century ruled over the empire from his seat inside this castle. It remained unconquered during the Tartar raids from 1241 to 1242. and protected Hungary against the attacks from the west. Since Vienna is right around the corner, the castle provided a protection for Vienna as well, especially during the Ottoman expansion in the 16th century. Bratislava became the official coronation town for Hungarian kings, and the castle became the formal seat of the kings of Royal Hungary. Maria Theresa had the castle extensively reconstructed with the help of the best imperial architects. It was no longer a fortress, rather a residence and representative palace. She had this new palace built along with several other buildings, and she added a new French garden. After the Empress and her son Joseph II died, the castle was deserted and became a military garrison. In May of 1811, a fire broke out in the military warehouse, and only ruins were left. After World War II, the castle underwent serious reconstruction and renovation. In 1968, state leaders signed a document here establishing Czechoslovak Federation. In 1992, new construction of independent Slovakia was signed here too. Bratislava Castle silhouette is created by 4 wings, each with a corner tower. For 2 centuries, the South and West Tower, known as Jewels Tower, housed the Hungarian coronation jewels. The area in the front of the castle is called Yard of Honor. It is bordered by 2 triumphal gates and guardhouses of the Imperial Guard. Europe's most underrated big city, Budapest, can be as challenging as it is enchanting. The sprawling Hungarian capital is a city of nuance and paradox, a unique metropolis at the heart of a unique nation. Here you'll find experiences like nothing else in Europe. You can feel your stress ebb away as you soak in 100-degree water surrounded by opulent Baroque domes. You can ogle some of Europe's most richly decorated interiors, which echo a proud little nation's bygone glory days. And you can ponder the region's bleak, communist era as you stroll amidst giant Soviet-style statues designed to evoke fear and obedience. You can go for an after-dinner stroll along the Danube, immersed in a grand city that's bathed in floodlights. Situated on both banks of the Danube, Budapest unites the colorful hills of Buda and the wide, business-like boulevards of Pest. Though it was the site of a Roman outpost during the 1st century, the city was not officially created until 1873, when the towns of Buda, Pest, and Buda united. Since then, Budapest has been the cultural, political, intellectual, and commercial heart of Hungary. Approximately 20% of the nation's population live in this capital. Budapest has suffered many ravages in the course of its long history. It was totally destroyed by the Mongols in 1241, captured by the Turks in 1541, and nearly destroyed again by Soviet troops in 1945. But this bustling industrial and cultural center survived as the capital of the People's Republic of Hungary after the war. And then, as the 1980s drew to a close, it became renowned for goulash socialism, a phrase used to describe the state's tolerance of an impressible, entrepreneurial spirit. Budapest has undergone a radical makeover since the free elections of 1990. Change is still in the air, as more and more restaurants, bars, shops, and boutiques open their doors. And with fashion-conscious youth parading the streets, almost all traces of communism may seem to have disappeared. Much of the charm of a visit to Budapest lies in unexpected glimpses into shadowy courtyards and in long vistas down sunlit, cobbled streets. Although some 30,000 buildings were destroyed during World War II, and in the 1956 revolution, the past lingers on in the often crumbling architectural details of the antique structures that remain. Architecturally stunning, Budapest is a tour de force of Habsburg splendor, best appreciated over rich cream cakes in the candle-lit coffee houses or a sumptuous steam in a thermal bath. Beyond the grandeur of the Royal Palace and the Hungarian State Opera House, the city has had its head very much in the progressive, party-loving present, free of its communist shackles. A dynamic cultural undercurrent once again flows freely down the Danube and across the city's grandly designed boulevards. The key landmarks of hilly Buda's center is the Imperial Castle District, home to the Gothic Matthias Church, and the gracefully domed Royal Palace. The lake-dotted greenery of City Park sweeps up to monumental Hero Square, renowned for its old master paintings and frescoes. When sightseeing gets tiring, you can revive in the steamy confines of Budapest's thermal baths. On today's excursion, we were able to savor a taste of Hungary during visits to one of the country's oldest chocolate makers and a famed distillery. We traveled to the heart of bustling Pest, the location of Zamos Chocolate Museum. Once there, we took a guided tour of the museum with its extensive displays showcasing the history of chocolate production. We then enjoyed a taste of several varieties of chocolates, as well as cocoa beans and marzipan. During our workshop, we observed the chocolate master as he presented a step-by-step demonstration of chocolate molding. Then we were given the opportunity to decorate our own chocolate bar, which we were able to take home with us. Zamos is one of Hungary's oldest traditional candy and chocolate manufacturer. Their passion for sweets and chocolate made the Chocolate Museum and Chocolate Workshop come to life in the heart of Budapest for decades. The museum showcases different stages of the history of chocolate production, during which visitors are able to taste dark, milk, and white chocolate, as well as actual cocoa beans and marzipan. After visiting the museum, you are shown a short film about the journey of cocoa from the equatorial plantations to the Belgian factories, and then eventually a history of Zamos itself. The Zamos Chocolate Museum welcomes chocolate lovers with a unique introduction to the history of chocolate. In the early 1930s, Matthias Zamos learned the tricks of making high-quality marzipan from a famous Danish confectioner. The master also showed him what can be made from the noble mass. The young Matthias Zamos quickly learned how to make wonderful rose petals from the excellent marzipan material, thanks to a lot of practice, talent, and good dexterity. Zamos gradually expanded his range of confectionery products with the same enthusiasm with which he made his marzipan creations. The delicious cakes and tarts were made from the best ingredients and according to the traditional recipes. And in his chocolate manufactory, he also produced the highest quality bonbons based on old recipes. During our visit to the Chocolate Museum, we were given the opportunity to try the art of chocolate tempering, and of course I gave it a whirl. Afterwards, the employee at the Chocolate Museum even said I did a pretty good job. The secrets, recipes, and the special passion in which Matthias Zamos created his confectionaries are passed down from generation to generation in the family. Today, Zamos has become one of the best-known family businesses in Hungary, and the exceptionally high quality of its products is deservedly famous far beyond the country's borders. The Zamos family opened their first cafe in Budapest in the early 1990s, together with the Austrian confectionery Harder. The unique atmosphere and delicious confectionery creations quickly brought outstanding success. Today, in 20 Zamos' coffee houses, we have the opportunity to give in to the temptation of delicacies. After the visit to the Chocolate Museum, we continued to the Zlak factory and museum, where the premium bitter Unicum has been produced since 1840. While there, we learned the history of this popular digestive and how the herb-infused spirit is made. We were then able to visit the cellars and sample some fresh Hungarian liqueur from the oak casks. The museum is a very personal, intimate collection of photographs from the Zwack family, but also a treasury of old posters and personal memorabilia dating back over 200 years, which tells the story not only of Unicum, but also the Zwack family. It also shows the history of Hungary from the halcyon days of the Belle Epoque through 2 world wars, the fascist tyranny, and the communist era to the present day. Here you can see the bottles and the machines of the past and the old distillery, which is called the Heart of Unicum. Moreover, you can see the biggest mini bottle collection of throughout Central Europe, which is shown in its gallery. It contains more than 17,000 different pieces. In 1790, Dr. Zwack, royal physician to the imperial court, offered the Habsburg monarch a sip of Unicum as a remedy for indigestion. The fame and popularity of Unicum was gradually spread as far beyond the court in Vienna. 50 years were to pass before a descendant to Dr. Zwack, Joseph Zwack, founded the first Zwack company. By 1892, the actual production site proved too small, and the company built its present distillery on the banks of the Danube, which remained the headquarters of the Zwack Unicum to the present day. Since 1867, the Zwack products were acclaimed internationally, receiving numerous awards and gold medals. The Zwack company traditionally was and is still today a family company. For more than 200 years, Unicum has successfully survived many upheavals to remain a dynamic company in constant renewal based on centuries of tradition and professional endeavors. During your visit, you can also witness the more than 100-year-old distilling systems and stone barrels used for extraction, and the aromatic herbs that might be part of the Unicum's secret recipe, which are exhibited in this tarnished building. The last station of the tour is the Unicum cellar, which is a labyrinth with almost 500 oak barrels, where the Unicum is aged for half a year. Visitors can taste the original Unicum and the Unicum plum straight from the oak barrels, enjoying this fragrant and flavorful herb liqueur. We were able to try 3 different types of Unicum during our tour: the original, a fruity version, and one that was made with coffee. The original was very bitter and strong, and it was reminiscent of Jägermeister. The fruity one had a nice flavor to it, and it was also very deceptively strong. And the one that was coffee, you could definitely taste the espresso in it. On our last evening, a troupe of Hungarian opera singers treated us to a live performance. And just like that, the Danube Waltz cruise was over. After making a stop in Munich, we made our way back to Chicago, and another Travels with Tony is in the books.